and welcome to Russ's Movie Corner. As you can see, I am sitting in front of my movie wall. And today, I'm going to be talking about another Screen Rant article entitled 25 things, wrong with Darth Vader everyone chooses to ignore. Now, before I get into that, somebody on my other rebuttal video, the 6 fallacies video, posted up some things, and I just kind of wanted to clarify some of my earlier points from that video. First off, he said I came across as rude in the comments section of the actual video, the Left Foot Media video. So I just kind of wanted to address that really quickly. Normally I'm not a very rude person, but when people sit there and say that they know more about a certain subject or something like that, it kind of, I'm not trying to be a know-it-all, but I know a lot about Star Wars, so I want people to see Star Wars The Last Jedi in its purest form. Just go watch the film, and when episode 9 comes out, go watch 7, go watch 8, and then go watch 9. And I guarantee you, when you get done watching episode 9, okay, it will come across as crystal clear in your mind, okay? And then to another point that he makes about reading material, if you have to have reading material as part of your experience, then we don't want it. First off, I kind of wanted to mention that this book, Dune, okay, does have extra reading in it, okay, because Frank Herbert himself put in terminology of the Imperium, okay. Now this is a appendice that explains a lot of the terms that he uses in this book, because if you don't know what some of these terms mean, if you just read through the book and you don't have that glossary in the back, you're not going to understand a lot of it. Tolkien had the same thing in Lord of the Rings. Now, the thing about Lord of the Rings is, when I went and saw the theatrical versions of Lord of the Rings, I can tell you right now, I didn't understand it. Okay, maybe you did, but I didn't, because I'd never read the books before. Okay, that's assuming that somebody had read the information presented in Lord of the Rings before and that knew what Lord of the Rings was. Okay, which is why I used it as an example of when Brandon used it in his video. Okay, I use it as an example of setup. Okay, you have to have setup before you can have the revelation, before you can have the payoff. If you don't have those things, you don't do it right. Okay, and that's the same thing with this. Okay, you can read this all you want, but unless you have some of the setups that are in the terminology, like the Great Revolt and like why we have some of the things that are in this world, you'll never know why it is. Okay, now one of the things that somebody decided to do to make some extra reading material that a lot of Dune fans say is canon, and that the new books that Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson have written aren't, is this, the Dune Encyclopedia. Okay, now the Dune Encyclopedia has things on like the Butlerian Jihad and backstories on a lot of characters like Duke Leto Atreides, Leto II. It tries to cover a lot of information that happened in between Children of Dune and Heretics, not Heretics, but God Emperor of Dune, because this one was written right after God Emperor of Dune. Okay, so Frank Herbert hadn't quite finished all of his stories yet. Okay, and Willis E. McNally tried to kind of fill in the blanks. So this is a good example of fan fiction written to satisfy the craving of Dune fans. Okay, and I own it because I'm a Dune fan. Okay, as long as being a Star Wars fan, as you can see. Okay, so the whole purpose that I show you this is because I want to say that there are supplemental materials out there that are created that enhance the experience. Okay, now in 1984, Dune premiered in theaters. Okay, and it bombed at the box office. Why? Because David Lynch did not tell the story correctly. Okay, he should have done it in 3 movies, because the book was done in 3 parts. Okay, right here, these 3 parts: Dune, Muad'Dib, and the Prophet. Okay? Which is how it should have been told. It should have been told in a trilogy, not a 2 hour and 17-minute movie that made people go, huh? Because I had never read this before I watched the movie, and I was just as puzzled as the rest of the people. Okay? So, yes, you can stand there and say, oh, you should be able to just watch the film without, all of this kind of stuff. I wonder how many people walked out of that movie in 1977, walked out of the original Star Wars wondering, who is Darth Vader? Where did he come from? Where does Luke Skywalker fit into all this? What are the Clone Wars? I'm sure they had a million questions. They just didn't have an internet where they could come out and express those questions. Okay? That's my point. Sometimes I can't get it across when I come across in the comments and when I'm typing. Okay? So sometimes it's better for me if I just come out here. And I don't mean to sound condescending. If I sound condescending, it's not because I'm trying to act like I know it all. Okay? I do know a lot. Okay? Now, third part is this guy was talking about the fact that a commander should actually be above the rank of captain. I said in the Star Wars universe, okay, that's not possible. Why? Because they based it loosely on the Imperial Navy and the Rebel Navy, on different things. But I'm going to show you that this is a priority sector high commander. This is the same insignia that Grand Moff Tarkin was wearing. Okay, this is an admiral. So like Admiral Piet, Admiral Ozzel, they were wearing these. This is a general. Okay, so General Veers, he was wearing this one. This is a colonel. This is a major. Commander. Captain. Lieutenant. So, captain, commander. Okay? These are the ranks of Star Wars. Now, the reason why I say this is because West End Games, where this comes from West End Games. Okay? Where this comes from, this came directly from Lucasfilm. Okay? Lucasfilm partnered with West End Games to make a lot of their source books. Now, one last one, because you're probably thinking, well, that was the Imperial Navy. Rebel insignias. Okay? We have a general. We have a colonel. We have a commander. We have a major, captain, lieutenant. Captain, commander. There you go. Okay? That's the Rebels. Again, this comes directly from Lucasfilm. So this is something that Lucasfilm has had for a long time. Okay? It may not be explicitly shown in every single one of the movies. And this is one of the reasons why, okay, if you don't like the fact that they're not doing that, then don't complain about it, okay? They're not going to explain to you how everything works, okay? So if you're having this thing in your mind of, I'm a former military, and thank you for your service, that's wonderful, okay? If you're former military, Star Wars is not using the same exact thing, okay? If you want that, go to Star Trek. Star Trek uses the Navy, the Navy's thing, because I had a friend who was in the Navy, and he said that Star Trek was fairly accurate in terms of their command structure, and because they based it entirely on the U.S. military. So if you go and you look at the ranks of the U.S. military, okay, of the Navy, the U.S. Navy, that's what they use, because they start at yeoman, and then they go on up to ensign, and then, all the way up to admiral. And they even have Commodore in there, which is not a very used thing in the U.S. military anymore. It used to be. But anyway, so enough of that rambling. I know I've been going on here for about 10 minutes on that. So we're going to get into this. Now, I'm going to be using a source today that is no longer considered canon. Okay? But it backs up a theory that comes from this movie. Sorry. I forgot which side I was on. So this is Revenge of the Sith, and in the movie, Darth Plagueis, they tell the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. And so I will be using let me see here. So, I will be using this. This was Star Wars, The New Essential Chronology. Okay? The New Essential Chronology, this one was written, again, I just didn't mark down everything in here for my notes. I just kind of grabbed everything to do this. This was in 2005, so it came out right after this movie, okay? Because they wanted to reflect, in fact, right here it just says, updated Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and the New Jedi Order. So this, they had a essential chronology before this, but it only covered, like, briefly covered the events of the Phantom Menace, because it was brand new at the time, and it was, and so this one came out like 6 years later, and so they were like, now we have everything in it. So I will be kind of backing up my theory with that. I know that a lot of the information that's in that isn't considered canon. What I'm talking about specifically relates to this movie, okay? And it will come up here very shortly. So the article starts, and it says, Darth Vader is one of the most prominent movie villains of all time. He has influenced countless characters since his seminal debut in 1977, both with his intimidating presence and his ultimately tragic arc. Vader is the cornerstone of the first 6 Star Wars movies. He is the character who ties it all together. If watching in chronological order, that is, from Phantom Menace all the way to Return of the Jedi, the viewer is able to follow him from childhood in Phantom Menace all the way up to his redemptive end in Return of the Jedi. Even now, in the midst of the new trilogy, establishing brand new characters, Vader remains one of the most beloved Star Wars villains and is one of the most influential villains ever. And that's very true. Darth Vader is, like, still kind of like one of those villains that everybody loves, and I agree wholeheartedly with this guy on that. Because he has permeated pop culture so much, fans tend to have assumptions about him that may or may not be true. That said, we're breaking down the 25 things wrong with Darth Vader everyone chooses to ignore. So we're going to talk about this right here, right now. So number 25, his absent father. When audiences are introduced to Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, it is revealed that the boy does not have a father. While his lack of a father is mostly meant to be a reference to the almost biblical nature of Anakin's overall story, it makes virtually no sense within the Star Wars universe. If fans are led to believe that Anakin's birth is truly an immaculate conception, it would be the first in Star Wars history, and would also suggest that the boy was either conceived by a previously unknown deity or truly conceived by the Force itself. Had a little mistake there. Okay, so this is the thing. So if you go back and watch The Phantom Menace, in there, Qui-Gon asks Shmi Skywalker, who was the father of Anakin, and she replies, there was no father. I had this, I carried him, I gave birth, blah, blah, blah. So if you're a Christian like me, then you know that there's only been one immaculate conception in history, and that was Jesus Christ, okay? A lot of people have trouble believing that, have trouble believing in miracles and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into the religious implications of this whole thing. Just suffice to say that George Lucas based the character of Anakin Skywalker as a young boy on the personage of Jesus Christ, okay? So he was trying to say that the Force, okay, the Star Wars universe's Deus Ex Machina, or God, is the Force, okay? And so within the Force, if you've seen my 15 Things Screen Rant thing, Rebuttal, it's that kind of thing. Like, it's the Deus Ex Machina of the Star Wars universe. The Force can literally do anything. I mean, that's why, it's like, in that, this one guy was like, well, how could Ben, bring down a hut on Luke Skywalker without killing himself in the process? Well, duh. You can make the Force go where it wants, which means the Force has a will of its own. If it wants to create a life for Anakin Skywalker, it can. But the theory that I hold, and that a lot of Star Wars fans hold, some people don't, is found in this movie. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. Okay? Now, Palpatine tells this story to Anakin, and I think he does it to kind of subtly tell Anakin where he's coming from. Like, I think I'm going to tell you, Anakin Skywalker, about where you came from. Now, back here, buried in this new essential chronology, and yes, I know it's not 100% canon. As done by my video before, this was made in 2005, which was 10 years before, well, about 9 years actually, before Disney took it over and threw out the extended universe, the Legends EU. But in it, on page 32, so if you happen to have one of these, you can follow along with me. So on page 32, it starts with, the crafty Senator Palpatine studied the government's decay with a practiced eye and a knowing smile. Elected in 52, before the Battle of Yavin, or BBY, to represent the citizens of Naboo, he knew the time was drawing near when the citizenry would cry out for a strong leadership. Palpatine set wheels in motion behind the scenes. It is unclear how Palpatine fell under the mentorship of the Sith Lord Darth Plagueis, and little is known of Plagueis' own career. A mystic obsessed with eternal life, Plagueis is believed to have possessed knowledge that could sustain those who were dying, and perhaps even gain the ability to use midichlorians to draw new life directly from the wellspring of the Force. Palpatine, under the Sith named Darth Sidious, learned dark side traditions from Plagueis, but grew concerned over his master's stated intentions to create life from nothing. The child that resulted from this Force miracle, Plagueis insisted, would be the living embodiment of the Force itself. And at that moment, Sidious knew that his master was discussing Sidious's replacement. Soon after, Sidious killed Plagueis in his sleep. The work necessary to create a Force-conceived child continued, however. It was unclear whether Plagueis had initiated the process before his death, or whether Sidious implemented his former master's scheme for his own dark purpose. In keeping with the Sith rule, the Sith accelerated his training of his own pet project, the Zabrak child called Maul. Unknown to Plagueis, Sidious had taken the Zabrak from his home world of Iridonia, and in the dark reflection of the Jedi Order's own training methods, began tutoring Maul in the art of cruelty and manipulation. Droids did most of the day-to-day work, for Sidious needed to maintain his role as Senator of Naboo. But whenever Sidious returned to his secret Coruscant lair, he gave Maul lessons in how to take a blow without flinching and how to kill lesser creatures without mercy. On Tatooine, the slave Shmi Skywalker had given birth to a child more powerful in the Force than any other in history. The apparent product of forbidden research initiated by Darth Plagueis and taken up by Darth Sidious. This boy, Anakin Skywalker, had seemingly not been conceived by a human father, but by the midichlorians themselves. And Palpatine kept a close watch on Anakin as the boy grew. If trained as a Sith apprentice, such a child could be vastly more powerful than Maul. Now, he didn't know where this child was, okay? He didn't, he could probably sense the child through the Force. I don't think he knew exactly where the child was, and he wasn't about to go searching through the galaxy to go find him. So, he waited, and lo and behold, he hears about this, I'm sure that, Anakin was on Naboo, or was on Coruscant when Senator Palpatine was there, because he was with the Queen. I'm sure he probably sensed something about the boy, but wasn't able to act on it at that point, because he had to keep up the ruse. And then before he could question the child about anything, the child was whisked away to the Jedi Temple by Qui-Gon. And so he waited in the wings, and then when he found out that that this child was the one who flew a starship into a Trade Federation battlecruiser and blew it up, he was like, this is the child I've been waiting so long to see, because he'd been hearing rumors from the Jedi that they had found a kid with the high midichlorian count. So, there you go. That's kind of the only thing that makes sense to me in terms of where was Anakin's father. He doesn't have one. He's literally that. That's how it is. Okay. 24. He introduced midichlorians to Star Wars. Actually, he didn't. We'll get to that in 1 second. Let me read the thing here. It says, The Phantom Menace was one of the most hyped movies of all time prior to its release. It had been over a decade since the last Star Wars movie, and everyone wanted to know the previously undiscovered story of Vader's rise and fall. However, the movie tossed out a lot of curveballs and surprises that people weren't expecting. These days, people like to try and forget that the character that they were most excited to see in the prequels was also the one that introduced midichlorians to the Star Wars universe, putting an explicitly sci-fi bent on the Force, which had been completely mystical up to that point. So, no, Anakin did not introduced midi-chlorians to the Star Wars universe. That was George Lucas, okay? And then the scene that he's talking about is where Anakin has a cut on his arm, and Qui-Gon's cleaning it, and he takes a little blood sample. He says, "I'm going to check your blood for infections," and then he, sticks it into the little razor communicator thingy, and he goes, "Obi-Wan, do a midi-chlorian count for me," and he's like, "Oh my gosh, it's over 20,000. Even Master Yoda doesn't have a count that high." He's like, "No Jedi has." Which is what leads Qui-Gon to try to free the boy in the first place. And this has led to a lot of different things of, people who were always asking, "Oh, why didn't Qui-Gon, free Shmi Skywalker?" Well, if you watch the movie, he actually does try, okay? He does try to free Shmi Skywalker. He's not able to. Actually, she's freed anyhow because not Owen Lars, but Klieg Lars, Owen's father, does that anyway, and marries her. So she becomes Shmi Skywalker Lars in episode 2. So, and we'll get to that part of the story a little bit later, because this is one of the reasons why I actually wanted to do this video, was because of that. But as for this, no, it was George Lucas who did that, because he kind of wanted to explain how they use the Force. Because if you actually go back and watch episode 1, they actually put an explanation of the midi-chlorians are just little teeny, almost like parasites that are benign, that live in people's cells, that allow them to feel the Force flowing through them and create, the connection between them and the Force. And yeah, you can take with that what you will. Okay, I'm not here to say whether it was good or not. I'm just here to say that that's what he did. It wasn't Anakin Skywalker who introduced midi-chlorians. It was George Lucas, and it wasn't even Anakin Skywalker who was talking about, "Oh wow, I have all these midi-chlorians in my blood." No, it was Qui-Gon Jinn who actually talked about that. So if you want to get technical, it was Qui-Gon Jinn who brought out the midi-chlorians, not Anakin Skywalker. So yeah, again, check your facts. Watch the movie, okay? You'll find out. Number 23, he's constantly disloyal. Darth Vader is one of the most notorious figures in the Galactic Empire, second only to the Emperor himself. On some level, though, that notoriety is surprising. While Vader is prone to great displays of power, he actually worked against the Emperor several times over the course of the movies, and dozens more in the comics and novels. Even in The Empire Strikes Back, Vader is tasked with taking out Luke by the Emperor. However, the moment he reveals the truth to Luke, he also presents Luke with the notion of taking down Palpatine so that they can rule the galaxy together. So I think what he's talking about here is that there was, in a number of the comics, video games like The Force Unleashed, and that he's actually talking about wanting to have an apprentice, and that's because Palpatine lied to him in this movie. It's the reason why I put episode 3 up here, because a lot of this stuff connects back to this movie. Because in this movie, Palpatine tells Anakin, "I can help you save your wife." No, he can't. He totally lied to him. Because him falling to that was the whole reason he fell to the dark side, was because of a woman. And when that happened, he ended up coming to the point where he was like, oops. And so he wanted to take an apprentice. Now, as to Empire Strikes Back, again, if you watch the movie, okay, here again, do some research, okay? It's simple. All you have to do is watch the movie, okay? Or even just go on the Internet Movie Database and just search through the quotes and in episode 5, and you will see that whole long conversation between Luke and Obi-Wan, and the Emperor, actually, not Luke and Obi-Wan, sorry, between Vader and Luke, and between Vader and the Emperor. Vader actually says, because he's like, "The son of Skywalker must be destroyed." And he goes, if he could be turned, he would become a powerful ally. Okay, now if you go back and watch the original version, if you don't like the new versions because you don't like Hayden Christensen, and that's alright, if you go back and watch the original version on VHS, or if you can find it on Blu-ray, because I think the Blu-rays have the theatrical cuts, if you go back and watch the theatrical cut, when they use the old woman in the cloak with the weird eyes and stuff like that, he goes, yes, he would be a great asset. Because in Palpatine's mind, he's thinking, oh yeah, I could subvert Luke Skywalker, kill his father, and then I have a powerful apprentice who's a Skywalker. Woohoo! So again, factually incorrect. It's not that he was disloyal. He actually asked the Emperor, hey, can I go and subvert my son? And he's like, yeah, go do it, man. That's the point. Okay? So, that's what we're trying to talk about here. And yes, he did. But what happened to the apprentice, Starkiller, in The Force Unleashed? If you've ever played The Force Unleashed, he got killed. Every single apprentice. Palpatine, this is why I'm talking about this. Palpatine was so all-powerful, the only thing he didn't see coming, because he was using the lightning in Return of the Jedi, was the fact that Anakin Skywalker resurfaced, picked him up, and threw him off the balcony. Okay? He didn't see that because he was so immersed in trying to kill Luke Skywalker for his insolence. Okay? That he wasn't seeing his own thing. That's why I'm saying Snoke wasn't all-powerful, okay? Because Palpatine felt Luke Skywalker turn and grab the thing right next to him. He allowed him to do it because he knew Vader was going to stop him at that point, because he knew Vader was still on his side. Anakin Skywalker hadn't resurfaced at that point, okay? So this is why I'm saying, if you watch the films, the action makes sense in the context of the characters. It really does. You just have to see it. That's why a lot of us say you need to go back and rewatch it and just see it with fresh eyes, because it's there. Whether you want to believe it's there or not, it's there. Okay? So now, number 22, he took on an apprentice way before he was ready. This one goes to the Clone Wars TV series, where they're talking about Ahsoka Tano. So it says, Star Wars The Clone Wars focuses on Anakin's time as a Jedi between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So this is actually after he's become a Jedi Knight, and they said, hey, we're going to send you a new apprentice. So if you've seen the 2008 Clone Wars movie, that one is the one that has the introduction of Ahsoka Tano, who actually becomes very integral to Rebels, because she has an inkling of who Vader is. She doesn't know for sure, but she has this inkling of who he is. It says mostly so that his Jedi career is more believable, and so that his turn to the dark side doesn't feel as abrupt. The main core of the relationship of the show is between Anakin and his apprentice Ahsoka Tano. This happens immediately when the series begins, but Anakin was far from ready to take on an apprentice by the Attack of the Clones, and still had a great deal to learn. As good as the show was, it's hard to accept that he was actually ready for that at the beginning. Was Obi-Wan ready? Obi-Wan had just become a Jedi Knight at the end of Phantom Menace. He wasn't ready for an apprentice, but he did it anyway, against the Council's urging, against Yoda's urging. He took an apprentice. Was Obi-Wan ready for that? No. In fact, Obi-Wan was still training Anakin, yes. Okay, but the Clone Wars, see, this is the thing. The Clone Wars movie, 2008 movie, and then the show takes place about a year and a half, well, maybe about a year and a half into the Clone Wars, okay? So all of those seasons that you see take place in a relatively short amount of time, about a year and a half to 2 years, okay? So, was he ready? No. Is any master truly ready? Except for maybe Yoda? No! That's the whole point of having... This is the thing. That's the whole point of having, like, you go talk to your teacher. Go down to a local school and talk to a teacher and say, were you ready? When you came out of college and you got your first teaching job, were you ready for it? And they're going to say no, and if I didn't have a mentor who'd already been through it, I wouldn't have made it. Okay? So, yeah, Anakin had someone to fall back on. Obi-Wan. Okay? Now, I haven't seen the show personally. Okay? So, all I know is that Anakin spent a lot of time, okay, working with Ahsoka and, trying to pass on what he's learned. Okay? Are they ever truly ready? No. Okay? And I can tell you, I'm training to be a teacher myself. Am I going to be ready? Probably not. I'm going to be relying on a lot of teachers to help me through things, okay? And for what I do now, that's what I do. I rely on a lot of people for help and to tell me things and to do things. So, yeah, you're never truly ready for that kind of stuff, okay? But it's something that you can do, okay? Go be a mentor to a kid. I guarantee you're going to learn as much about yourself as they're going to learn from you, okay? So that's kind of, one of those things where it's like, yeah, was he ready? Probably not, okay? But that didn't push him over the edge. That's not what led him down the dark side. So, yeah. 21. He should not have survived Mustafar. While Anakin Skywalker has been christened Darth Vader before his battle with Obi-Wan on Mustafar, this fight truly marks when he became Darth Vader in the eyes of most fans. Through their duel, though their duel went on for some time, Vader lost horribly. It cost him an arm and a leg, actually an arm and 2 legs, forcing him to be placed in his now iconic black armor, becoming the horrible blend of man and machine. However, Vader's wounds could and should have ended him within minutes. Unless the Emperor had found him the moment he collapsed onto the ground, there's no way that he should have survived. Again, the Force is the Deus Ex Machina. He was using the dark side to keep himself alive. Okay? And it's also within the confines of the story. So, realistically speaking, he should have died. But, you know what? Within the confines of the story, because we had to have Darth Vader, for 4, 5, and 6, he couldn't die. So yeah, and I think even the novelization mentions that he was using the Force to try to stay alive. So I think that's kind of how they were trying to explain that was he. And I think even if you watch the commentary on it, they're kind of explaining that he's using the Force, using the dark side, kind of to keep. Basically, it's his will, it's his hate. At that point, that this is actually a phenomenon that is on the battlefield where if you've seen people that are on the battlefield and they should have died, like there's stories out there of guys that have taken like multiple bullets and they're still alive and they're fighting back and they're doing all this stuff, and you're thinking, how do these people do that? It's a sheer will to live, man. Okay? And while Anakin had the hate of Obi-Wan, because he thought everybody was against him, he had that hate, and that's what kept him alive. So yeah, that's the whole point of that. So yeah, again, action within the context of the characters is exactly what it is. So 20. Why did Obi-Wan keep his lightsaber? If the plan had always been to keep Luke away from the fight initially and to keep him out of the hands of the Empire, why would Obi-Wan have even kept Anakin's lightsaber? Even if he never planned to give it away, it seems like the weapon would have held too many bad memories. After all, this was Obi-Wan's best friend, who had succumbed to the terrible internal darkness and had gone on to do absolutely terrible things. Over the years, Vader's reputation in the galaxy would only grow worse. One would think that the saber would just prove to be a horrible reminder of his failure to save his friend. In the context of that, I think that Obi-Wan knew that he would have to face Vader again eventually. Whether Vader came to Tatooine and sought him out or anything like that. And I think what happened was when they found out that they had twins, I think Obi-Wan had in his mind a plan that he would watch over Luke, and at the proper time he would give him his father's lightsaber, tell him the good things about his father. Your father was a good Jedi and a great friend. Okay? So that's why that scene in Episode 4, if you go back and watch Episode 4, that scene is powerful within the context of this movie. Because this movie, that titanic fight between the two of them, yes, it ended their friendship, but it didn't end the good memories that Obi-Wan had. Because yes, Vader went on to do horrible things. And I think somewhere deep down, okay, even though Obi-Wan was still like, he's more machine now than man, he heard Padme's plea. There was good in him, and it was echoed by his son, by Vader's son. There's still good in him. And Obi-Wan refused to believe it because he thought he'd been lost to the personage of Darth Vader. Okay? So he was like, I don't think he's beyond redemption. But I think he also did it because he wanted to push Luke to fight his father for the final time. Okay? And as I mentioned in some of my previous videos, okay, had Luke stayed on Dagobah, they would have told him the truth eventually. Okay? They would have told him. And they probably would have told him about Leia. Okay, yes, there was another one. Okay, yes, there was another Skywalker. And so that's why, but Luke had to figure that out for himself. Okay? So again, that's something that was part of his training. Okay? Um, so yeah, that's definitely something that would, I think in my eyes is why he took the lightsaber, because he knew that eventually Luke would have to come and take over for him, because he wouldn't, I mean, no matter what, Obi-Wan was past his prime at that point. Okay? He'd lost the will to fight, just like um Yoda. And I tell people, if Yoda had been on Coruscant when they went to go fight the Emperor, that would have been a totally different fight. The thing is that all of the deaths of the Jedi around the galaxy had such a profound effect on the fabric of the Force within the context of this movie that's why he's kind of clutching his chest, and he's like, oh my gosh, all my brothers and sisters out there are dying. What am I to do? And that's why he's not able to take the Emperor, because he's not feeling he's feeling all of those deaths weighing him down the same way that Obi-Wan feels all the deaths of the people of Alderaan in Episode 4. Okay? Now, Obi-Wan's death at the hands of Darth Vader was a little bit different, because he's basically saying, look, I want to have this way. I want to do this a certain way. Like, it's not just a distraction. It's I'm going to sacrifice myself to Darth Vader to make him think he's won. And then while I'm a Force ghost, because I learned how to do that in all my years because of this movie, when I become a Force ghost, I will come back and tell Luke to go seek out Yoda. Okay? That was his plan in his mind in Episode 4. So, anyway, moving on. Number 19. He never tried looking for Obi-Wan despite wanting revenge. In the movies, despite Obi-Wan being the man responsible for Vader becoming a cyborg on life support, he never attempted to seek out his old master and make him pay. The movies actually do a good job of explaining why he never sought out Luke and Leia. He didn't know they existed. However, when it comes to Kenobi, there's really no reason why he would not have gone to look for him. There's definitely no reason why he would not have thought to search for Kenobi on his own home planet of Tatooine. Probably because he knew eventually Obi-Wan would come out of hiding, and he would get a chance to fight him. But that's not to say that he didn't actually go looking for him in the first few years after the end of the Clone Wars, and he became the true personage of Darth Vader. Because I think a lot of it is, again, within the context of the story, we don't know that he can go search for him. But if you've read the book Shadows of the Empire, you'll know that they can't rescue Han, because they don't rescue Han until the beginning of Return of the Jedi, because the book is set in between the events of Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So, because of that, it's like the whole time the book is teasing like we're gonna go rescue Han, and you're thinking in the back of your mind, well, they can't, because they have to fight. Now, had we never seen Episode 4, had we not had Episode 4 until, say, now, we probably would have been like, well, why didn't he go find him and kill him? Okay? So the story demands it. And also because I'm sure he did go looking for him. But, again, he doesn't like Tatooine. He grew up there. He spent 9 years of his life there as a slave. Do you really think he's going to go back to the planet he hates the most? And besides, I mean, what is he going to do? Pop on in and see his uncle? Or see his stepbrother, I mean? Hey, Owen, how's it going? Who are you? I'm Anakin Skywalker. You're a dude in a mask. What the hell? So yeah, I don't know. We don't know. But this one right here was the reason why I kind of wanted to do this video, because I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, seriously? Again, Screen Rant. um, 18. Why did he not return to save his mother? Anakin was raised a slave, as fans learned in Episode 1. When he is rescued by the Jedi to follow a new path, his mother remains a slave and he promises he will return for her. However, in Episode 2, it is revealed that even all these years later, Anakin never returned to Tatooine to free her. He returns to save her after having a vision of seeing her in danger and learning that she was freed by a man named Lars, who she also fell in love with and married. I didn't add that on. Even though he could have broken from his training to rescue her at any point, he never did. Okay, so the Jedi is not the Jedi is a monastic order. Okay, once you enter, you can't just leave whenever you want. Okay, because if you watch Episode 2, Anakin actually says it. Attachment is forbidden. Okay, so yes, this is why the Jedi took kids, and this is why the First Order does this. The First Order smashes a planet, grabs all the younglings, and then trains them to be soldiers. Why? Because they will not have memories of their parents. As Finn said, okay, I was taken from a family I never knew. That was the Jedi. The difference is that the Jedi would take kids willingly from their parents, okay, wouldn't rip them from their parents, but they would come and say, hey, your kid has the Force, and we're going to train him as a Jedi. Now, whether or not they want to go back and meet their family at some point, that's up to them, okay? And I think KOTOR kind of explains what happens, because Bastila goes back, you go back and see her mom on some planet or something like that. It's been a while since I played the game, so I don't remember all the details of the story, but I remember that you do have a side quest where you meet up with Bastila's mom, and you talk about her dad and all this other stuff. But why didn't he return to save his mother? Duh. He's in the Jedi Order. He can't just go, hey, Obi-Wan, I need to go kill Watto so that I can free my mom. Come on! What would he have done? He doesn't have money. He's not going to be able to show up on Tatooine and say, hey, I'm a Jedi now, Watto. You better give me my mom. No! That's not how it works. Okay? That's not how it works. Yes, he did say that. Okay? Yes, he did say that. But that's the idealistic nature of a young boy. How many times did you say to your parents, like, hey, when I'm older, I'm going to do this? And you're not that. Okay? Yes, you have dreams and goals and ideals in your head as a young kid that when you get older, you look back at yourself and you go, man, was I naive. Okay? But again, that's not the context of what the story was, okay? And so, yeah, that's why I'm like, that was my answer, because he's training to be a Jedi, and you can't just up and leave, okay? He can't just tell Obi-Wan, hey, I'm gonna go kill Watto and free my mom. That's not gonna work either, okay? Yes, as a boy, he had dreams of coming back. In fact, if you read the novelization of Episode 1, he actually does have dreams of coming back and freeing all the slaves. Did he free all the slaves in Episode 2? No. Why not? Because the story doesn't matter. He's a Jedi at that point, okay? He's looking for one, his mom, okay? And that's because he's having dreams of her being tortured, okay? She's in pain. So, yeah, again, did you watch the movies? This is what makes me think that people at Screen Rant should not be writing about Star Wars, okay? Unless they want to do a little bit of research first. Alright, 17. He is often at odds with the Empire's values. Darth Vader is seen by many as a figurehead for the Empire, but this is constantly proven not to be the case. Even in the original movie, there are high-ranking officers who don't take Vader seriously because of his commitment to the Force. They see his views as archaic, outdated, and completely at odds with the Empire's overall mission of a sterile and ordered universe free from any faith except faith in the Empire itself. Vader is often much more emotional than one would think, especially for a man who is mostly a robot. Okay, this one is more idealistic thinking, where it's 20 years have passed, 19 to 20 years have passed between this movie and Episode 4, and during that time, the Jedi are reviled. In fact, the new book, Lost Stars, which takes place, I think, It's like 8 to 10 years after the events of Episode 3. I don't remember, but the young characters are about 8 years old, and then they go through some training for about 10 years, and then they become, and it's about the time of Episode 4. So yeah, it's about, I think it's set about 8 years after the events, because the parents remember the fall of the Empire, but the kids don't remember anything but the Empire. Okay, and the Force is just kind of whispered about. It was something that the Jedi used for evil, because that's what the Empire wanted people to think. Okay, so at this point, 20 years after this movie, okay, the Force is literally sort of something mystical, something out there that people don't really believe in anymore. Okay, hence the sayings, may the Force be with you. It was just a saying people said because that's what the Jedi said to each other. May the Force be with you. And now it's being said by those people. So yeah, it's so that's, yeah, it's it's not at odds with the Empire's values, okay? Because he's enforcing those values. You obey or you die. That's literally the Empire's values. Come on, man. That's not at odds with the Empire's values. It's, yes, they're saying your sad devotion to that ancient religion has helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes. What does Vader do? He walks up and chokes the life out of Mahdi. Come on, man. That's literally what it does. He's like, argh. Like, I'll make you believe. You believe now? Okay? So, yeah. How is that at odds with the Empire's values? He's basically like, you're questioning me? Okay, here. A small demonstration of my power. Okay? So, yeah, that's not at odds with the Empire's values, okay? Because he's the figurehead of the Empire, exactly as you said before. Alright. 16. People aren't afraid of him as he thinks. It says, most high-ranking officials in the Empire believe Vader to be outdated, but they don't really take him seriously. This is evidence in A New Hope, and Vader has to actually demonstrate his power by choking someone simply for them to even believe in his mastery of the Force, as notorious as he might be. Vader is seen throughout the Empire as something of a lapdog to the Emperor. He even serves that role to Grand Moff Tarkin somewhat, as he does whatever the officer tells him to do. People do often fear Vader, but usually only after he puts his incredible power on display. Actually, no, because he had like an aura, like a presence around him that was malevolent, and people knew that they didn't want to challenge him. Now, this is where the book, actually I have it right here, this is where the book Death Star comes into play, and this is a really good read. I recommend anyone go out and check this book out, because it really explains the role of Mahdi very, very well. Because Mahdi saw Vader much the same way as Hux sees Snoke in the novelization of The Last Jedi. Because Snoke, well, Snoke being Snoke, he's the leader, and Hux has visions of himself becoming Supreme Leader Hux, which is why he acts the way he does towards the end of The Last Jedi, because he's like, wow, the Supreme Leader's dead. Yes, I can become Supreme Leader Hux, and that's why he's kind of like challenging the leadership. Mahdi is the same way. He's like, whatever, man. Screw you. You don't have any power. Yeah, what? That's why he has to. It's not that people saw him as being in the way to their conquest of power. Mahdi could see himself as emperor one day. And it takes people like Vader to put them in their place, which is why he does that. And besides, Mahdi blew up on the Death Star anyway with Tarkin and all the others, so what does it matter? I mean, the thing is that, yeah, people did fear the wrath of Vader, because stories go around, okay? So Mahdi probably heard the stories and just chose to ignore them, which is why he challenges Vader. Because, again, he saw Vader as a linchpin in his conquest of power. Again, watch the movies, man. um, 15. He eliminated young Jedi while his wife was pregnant. Says, if there is one terrible act that people want to overlook in Darth Vader's life, it is that he destroyed all of the young Jedi in training during the execution of Order 66. It's easily the most disturbing thing he ever did, especially after having just become Darth Vader. However, it is even more disturbing in the fact that his wife Padme, who he was still keeping his turn to the dark side a secret from, was pregnant with twins at that point in time. Well, he didn't know she was pregnant with twins, okay? So that was one thing that was explicitly stated throughout the movie and throughout this movie and throughout the novelization, was because she wanted to keep her pregnancy a secret, she did not go visit medical droids. She only visited, just to, I think she kind of did her own care and stuff like that. So yeah, she was trying to keep things a secret, because if people learned who the father was, there would have been repercussions throughout the entire Republic. Okay, a forbidden romance between a Jedi and a senator. That would have been huge. Okay, that would have been scandalous. Like, whoa, no way. So that, yeah, that's part of him becoming Darth Vader. It's not that we choose to ignore it. It's that, yes, he had to do that to become Darth Vader. And he did it. He actually says it to her, and I'm doing it for you. He actually says that to Padme. So, again, this movie, you have to watch it to get the context. That's what the context is. He became a dark side for Padme. He literally fell to the dark side because of Padme. Okay? Because he didn't want her to die in childbirth. That's the whole reason he came to the dark side. And that was the whole reason why he wanted to take on an apprentice later, because Palpatine lied to him in this movie. Again, watch the film. That's why I keep saying watch the film, because the story is there. It's really there. You have to be willing to see it. Okay? If you can't see it, it's because you are completely blind. Okay? That's, if this is coming across as condescending, it's meant to be. Because crap like this, okay, should not be written. I shouldn't have to do this. Okay? Screen Rant? No. Bad Screen Rant. Okay? If you're an editor at Screen Rant, shame on you for publishing crap like this. Okay? If it's coming across as condescending, it's because I want it to come across as condescending. Okay? Crap like this should never be written, which is why I'm doing this video. Whether or not you care. Okay? I'm not coming across as rude. I'm coming across as condescending because shit like this sucks. Okay? And fans like me hate it when you do this, because it makes us wonder if you've ever actually watched a Star Wars film. Okay? Because if you've watched Star Wars, because even my wife, who again is not a Star Wars fan like me, she doesn't wear the shirts. She just casually goes and watches the movies. If she can watch the movies and understand the story, where's this guy? Why can't he watch this and get the context of the story? It's not something we missed. It's something Anakin did. It's not what we choose to ignore. Anakin did it because he was becoming Darth Vader. And he did it for her, because she was pregnant. Duh! That's in the context of the story. Again, action makes sense in the context of the characters and the story. Duh. Sorry. It frustrates me when stuff like this is written, okay? And sometimes I just have to get it off my chest this way. I just have to get it out there and just be like, and Screen Rants right now one of the worst offenders for this, and I cannot forgive them for it. 14, Vader being Luke's father was not originally planned. This is actually something that, again, if you watch some of my other videos, and I think I actually mentioned this in the Six Fallacies video, there was an original documentary made called, it was a 60-minute documentary called From Star Wars to Jedi, The Making of a Saga. Okay? And it was about the making of Return of the Jedi, and they kind of touched on the original Star Wars, and then they kind of touched on Empire Strikes Back, and then they spend about, I don't know, probably about the first 10 minutes kind of talking about Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back. And in there, George Lucas mentions, okay, that he wrestled with the fact that he didn't know if he wanted the Man in Black to be Luke's father. And he wrestled with it, and he wrestled with it, and he and Larry Kasdan kind of sat down and talked about it, and they came to an agreement, and they decided to make it so. Okay? And that was the revelation in that movie. Oh my God! This man that's walking around in this suit is Luke Skywalker's father? What? So, the writer says, the reveal that Darth Vader is actually Luke's father is one of the most important twists in the franchise history. However, even if this is maybe the single story point that most defines the Star Wars saga, it was not originally planned. The original script was for the sequel saw no mention of the twist, but it was also very different from what would have become The Empire Strikes Back, as the studio was not sure if Star Wars was actually going to make any money. Once it became a huge hit, the story ballooned in scope, and the iconic twist was conceived. So yeah, it's like we don't choose to ignore that. What is it even doing in here? We never ignored that point. What the hell is this guy talking about? That doesn't make any sense, honestly, okay? That makes no sense, okay? I mean, it's the same thing with Leia, okay? When he wrote the script, Luke and Leia, they were originally going to be a love triangle, okay? But when he got to the third film, he needed something that was going to set Luke off. And he came up with the idea of the taunt of, especially your sister. And then he's like, oh, so we have a twin sister. Ha ha ha. Now I know. Obi-Wan has failed completely. Ha ha ha. That was the point. Okay, that was what was going to set Luke over the top. Okay, but when he wrote Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas had no idea at that point that Leia was Luke's father. Or Luke's sister, sorry. And that, that they had that sibling relation. Which is why she plants a kiss on his lips, okay? Because they had no idea at that point, okay? And they still had no idea at that point. Even if you take it within the context of, yes, Leia is Luke's sister, they still didn't know that! Okay, Obi-Wan never told him, Yoda never told him. So, yeah, at that point on Hoth, yeah, they didn't know. I'm sure that once he found out, and he was sitting there, he's probably like, wait a minute. Oh, she planted a kiss on me. Ooh. Well, that won't be happening again. You know? So, yeah, why is that even in there? That makes no sense. That's not something we choose to ignore. We know that. That's why we're fans. Hello. 13. He's actually the main character of the first 6 movies. Some people miss this or choose to ignore this because Darth Vader is most often seen as the villain, but he is truly the main character of what fans consider to be the original saga. Going by chronological order, the first 3 movies tell the story of Anakin Skywalker being drawn to the dark side and his tragic downfall into becoming Darth Vader. The original trilogy of A New Hope to Return of the Jedi then tell the story of Vader being saved from the dark side by his son, and are an overall story of redemption. The 2 trilogies balance each other very well, thematically speaking. That was George Lucas's intention from the beginning, man. That's why this movie is the perfect bridge movie, because it brings in points from episode 1 and 2, and then it continues it through 4, 5, and 6, okay? And I will continue to say that till the end of time. This is the perfect bridge movie, ever. It bridges the 2 sagas perfectly, okay? And no, we don't choose to ignore it. We know that. Duh. Come on, man. Seriously. We're fans. That's what we do. We know this stuff. Again, why is that even in here? Are you preaching to non-fans? I don't know. His fall from grace was originally going to stem from paranoia. While most fans agree that his turn was not perfectly executed, I don't know what most fans are, Vader's reasons for turning to the dark side are empathetic and even understandable. He wanted to keep the people he loved from losing their lives, something that he was especially terrified about after the loss of his mother. However, the original script saw Anakin go mad abruptly, growing increasingly paranoid that the Jedi were actually planning to take over the Senate and overthrow the government, something that he himself would obviously wind up doing simply by standing at Palpatine's side as he turned the Senate into the Empire. I don't know if he's talking about like the original screenplay, the Journal of the Wills. I don't know what he's referring to here, because as far as I know, and I don't know, because I think, so this is where it's kind of sticky, is the video game version does not mention his fall was because of Padme, and I think they did that deliberately because the game was released like a month before the movie was, because they were generating hype, so they wanted to get the game out there so that people could play it. And so I think a lot of people kind of saw that and was like, oh, whoa, that's so cool. So they kept that part out of it because, it's like all it says is like Palpatine played on his fears and insecurities or something like that during one of the missions. I think it was right as you're going to Utapau. As Obi-Wan. And so it's one of the, like I said, it's a sticky point. I don't know where he's coming from with this. Maybe that was George Lucas's original intention. I don't know. As far as I know, it was always going to be because of Padme. That was the reason. In fact, even in the novelization, which is based off of the screenplay, it does not mention paranoia about the Jedi taking over. That is one of the things that that Palpatine mentions in his office during the confrontation with Mace Windu, was that they were the Jedi are taking over. I told you this would happen, kind of a thing. So that was one of the things that he did tell them. Oh yes, the Jedi, and that's one of the things he tells them at the thing. The Jedi fear to lose their power, and that's why they're keeping you back, and that's why they're doing all this stuff. So literally, he's telling Anakin what he wants to hear, because Anakin has always felt like he's been held back. So yeah, I mean, again, I don't know where this guy's coming from with this, because paranoia is part of that. Okay, but it's mostly his paranoia over losing his wife is why he falls. So I don't know where this guy's coming with this. His relationship with Ahsoka is just as tragic with Obi-Wan's. It says, while Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith do their best to establish the friendship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, Clone Wars does an even better job of portraying Anakin's close relationship with his Padawan Ahsoka. At first, she is reckless and impulsive, which allows Anakin to mature as a Jedi. It helps him to grow more introspective, and we soon realize just how embarrassing his behavior had been before that. The series handles their relationship with care, and the amount of trust and faith that Ahsoka puts in Anakin makes his turn all the more tragic. Well, and that's why I think in the Rebel series they have her appear, and she has an inkling of who Vader really is. She won't come out and say it, but she has an inkling of who Vader is because of her close relationship with Anakin Skywalker. Again, it's not something we choose to ignore. Again, why is that even in here? That's not something that fans choose to ignore. It wasn't explicitly stated because most of the fans go by the movies, okay? And so that's really where, and that was the struggle. It wasn't between Anakin and Ahsoka. It was between Anakin and Obi-Wan. Was that duel? And really, I mean, I don't know. I haven't watched Rebels, so I don't know if Ahsoka faces down Vader. I have no idea if that happens. So if you know, leave a comment below. Let me know. But again, that's not something that fans we sit there and go, oh my gosh. Yeah, it's there, and it's but it is something where, wasn't Anakin just as brash and impulsive as Ahsoka? That's why they put her with him. It's like, hey, look, we found somebody that's exactly like you. Here you go. That was Yoda's doing. Yoda's like, we need to kind of show Anakin what he was and why it's like, dude, she's doing the same things you were doing. That's like Obi-Wan says that throughout that whole entire thing. He's like, because she's like, she's like going and doing stuff, and he's like, what are you doing? You're gonna get yourself killed. And Obi-Wan's like, I told you that. That's the whole point, man. That's why they did that, is because they were showing Anakin that he was that person. Again, why is that even in here? 10. He just wanted to use the dark side to keep his family safe. Anakin found a surrogate father in Qui-Gon Jinn, who saved him from slavery and introduced him to the ways of the Jedi. He lost Qui-Gon almost immediately. When he was older, he had a vision that his mother was in danger and arrived too late to save her from a terrible fate at the hands of the tribes of Tusken Raiders. After seeing visions of losing Padme as well, Anakin wanted nothing more than to keep the people he loved safe. He was corrupted by his own need, as well as Palpatine's exploitation of that need. Again, that's... who's ignoring this? That's the story, dumbass! Who's ignoring that? That's literally the story in this film. The hell? I just spent like 10 minutes explaining that. Not, what, 1 or 2 of these points ago. Never mind. This guy's an idiot, okay? I'm sorry. This guy is not a good writer, and I don't know what he's talking about here, okay? And this is one of the reasons why I do these things, because it's like, if you want to be a writer, don't write stuff like this, okay? Find something that people are ignoring, okay? People are truly ignoring. And then write about that. And if you can't come up with 25 things, then keep it to 15. Half of this stuff shouldn't even be in here, because it's basic story elements that are in the movie. This shouldn't even be in here. I don't even know what the hell this guy's coming from. And it's like, okay, you're stupid. The suit was originally designed so Vader could survive in space. Darth Vader's outfit is incredibly practical, all things considered. It does what it needs to do, which is keep him alive. With all of its cybernetic enhancements, it's really just for keeping Vader mobile and active instead of seeing him confined to a chair. Duh. However, it was originally going to be even more resilient, to the point that it was designed so that Vader could be able to survive in space. As he is sent careening into space at the end of the original movie, it makes sense, even though that he is still at least safe inside his TIE fighter. Yeah, he literally was supposed to be self-contained. That's actually Ralph McQuarrie. If you've seen some of the old original designs for Vader's suit, it actually was like completely vacuum sealed, so that he could survive in space. But because of the technology and how they had to build the suit so that David Prowse could actually move, they ended up scrapping that idea because it was just going to be too cost inefficient to be able to make a suit that they could do that with. So they just designed it as the black armor that we see and know and love today. So yeah, again, this is actually something that people aren't ignoring. This is a concept art that was done by Ralph McQuarrie, and it's not even relevant to fans. Aren't ignoring that. Fans don't even care because it's not part of the design of the suit. 8. His respirator is actually the sound of a scuba tank. Sometimes the most memorable aspect of a character is a relatively mundane one. This may be best exemplified by Darth Vader. As great as his design is, as many great lines as he had, as many great moments as he's been a part of, the most iconic thing about Vader will always be the sound of his breathing. This sound comes itself from a fairly mundane source. As distinctive as it is, the sound is actually a slightly modified recording of someone breathing through a scuba tank. Hearing them both, it's easy to pick up on heavy similarities. And again, that's a trivia item that this guy probably found off of IMDb. I mean, honestly, if you go back and look at it, that's what it is. And, that's something that Ben Burt talks extensively about in the DVD versions of the movie when they do the commentary. Actually, if you go back and watch the commentary, when Vader first appears on scene, George turns to him and says, "How did you do that, Ben?" And he goes, "Oh, well, I used the sound of a respirator, scuba respirator." And he's like, "Oh, that's cool." Again, who's ignoring these things? Nobody's ignoring this stuff. It's stuff we choose to forget because it's Darth Vader. I mean, honestly, like, this isn't even... never mind. His actions are completely driven by emotion. From the beginning, the Empire has always been about keeping a level head and maintaining a cold and hard set sense of order across the galaxy, yet nearly everything that Darth Vader has ever done on screen has been driven by his emotions. In this fact, the Vader that the later movies actually bears similarities to his prequel counterpart, at least in Episode 3. Vader gives in so deeply to fear and anger in the movie that he almost destroys the people closest to him. In Return of the Jedi, his change of heart causes him to destroy the Emperor to save his son. Overall, there's a reason why people try their best not to make him angry. That's the character. In fact, there was a deleted scene in Episode 1 where a young Greedo accuses Anakin. This is actually the novelization, by the way, and you can actually see it on the special features of the DVD. He says to Qui-Gon basically breaks up the fight, and he's like, you know, what's going on here? And Anakin's like, well, he told me I cheated. And so he turns around to the young Greedo and he says, do you think he still cheated? And he's like, yeah. And then he runs off. And so Qui-Gon turns to them and turns to Anakin and says, did the fight change his mind? No. And he goes, well, then why did you fight him? Well, because he, made me angry. And he's like, well, then you need to control that. Okay? I think that had Qui-Gon survived, his training of Anakin would have been a lot different. But within the context of the story, Obi-Wan needed a push to become a knight so that he could train Anakin, because that's who trained Anakin, was Obi-Wan Kenobi. We know that from Episode 4, so that was why Qui-Gon died. But yes, and the Empire ruled by a level head. Have you seen Palpatine, dude? He's not level-headed. He's very maniacal. I mean, he's a little out there, man. I don't know if I'd want to mess with that guy. I mean, this is not something, this is exactly what George Lucas intended. He wanted to show that, yes, the man in the mask who just is like, choking every single person that he comes across, almost, okay, was that guy from the beginning. Duh. George Lucas wrote the character that way. Hello? Again, did you watch the films? Who's missing this? That's my thing is, who's this guy writing to? It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't. I don't know. He never looked for his children because he didn't know they were alive. While the prequels were full of plot holes and inconsistencies when stacked up against the original trilogy, fans love to talk about why Vader never sought out his children, even though this is one of the few details that's actually explained very well. What plot holes was he talking about? I don't remember any plot holes being in the prequels. Anyway, so much of the finale of Revenge of the Sith hinges on the fact that Vader never knew that his children were born. Even though Luke was raised on Vader's home planet, he never had a reason to go back there to look for him because he didn't even know that he existed. The Emperor had told Vader that both Padme and the kids were lost in childbirth, and he believed him, adding to another tragic layer to his story. Okay, again, nobody's ignored this. And actually, when I was reading the novelization, because I didn't understand why Padme still looked pregnant when she was being carted to her tomb on Naboo. And that was something that kind of nagged at me. And when I bought the novelization and I read it, it said that if any spies of the Empire were on Naboo that day, they would see that she was still pregnant, like her belly was still extended. So they actually, I don't know if they put something up there or if they just, because I don't think that after you give birth, I don't know that the stomach would stay that rounded. I think it would deflate some. So they might have put something in her uterus or in her abdomen to simulate that. I don't know. That's a story for another time. But again, that's something that is told in context of the thing. And he actually says to his wife, "You killed her." So yeah, who's ignoring this fact? I don't know that anybody is. Okay. He's never been beaten by Luke in a fight. Not counting Luke's fight with Vader during his unique vision quest on Dagobah, Luke has had 2 lightsaber battles with his father. While he survives both of them, he really doesn't win either. Even though Luke is much better, more level-headed fighter in Return of the Jedi, he ultimately loses the battle. I don't think so. In fact, he suffers heavy losses both times. What? Okay, I'll come back to this in a second. It's the first time he loses a hand, and the second time he loses his father. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, hang on. It's the very fact that Luke is in such imminent mortal danger that causes Vader to act against the Emperor and save his son's life. Okay. Where to begin? Okay, you're right. He did lose the fight the first time. He didn't lose the second time. Luke actually beat his father. He didn't kill him. He chopped off his hand! Again, have you watched Return of the Jedi? Because it's clearly shown that Luke wins that fight. Because Vader's prodding, okay, makes him angry. And he goes after Vader with renewed vengeance. Have you seen the film? You claim to have seen the film, but I don't think you have. Honestly, because it doesn't... It's clearly explained. The way he redeems his father. Very simple. Okay? Palpatine comes down the stairs and he goes, "Good, good. Strike your father down and take his place at my side." And he looks at the hand. And again, this is something, if you watch that Star Wars to Jedi, okay, this is something Mark Hamill himself explains because he's the narrator. Okay? He says, we're reminded of the duel in Empire because he cuts off Vader's right hand. And he looks at his own hand that Vader cut off. And he goes, no, I'm not going to make the same mistake my father made. So he takes his lightsaber, he turns it off, and he throws it away. Luke beat him, you dumbass! Again, watch the film. And who's missing this stuff? This guy clearly is missing this stuff if he's trying to explain it to people. Because he's not even explaining it well. Luke had beaten his father. Okay? Vader is literally sitting there on the edge of the abyss overlooking the pit to the reactor chamber, and he's literally like, dude, don't kill me, man, seriously. And yes, for a split second, the personality of Vader takes over, and he is going, and he suddenly realizes, I have ties to my wife. I have ties to my past as Anakin Skywalker. And Anakin Skywalker climbs up from the depths of Darth Vader's mind and takes over. And he goes, you know what? You lied to me. You took away my son. You took away my daughter. You took away my wife. You lied to me. Enough of this. And he picks him up and he throws him over. Screen Rant, you suck. You do. You suck. Okay. 4. He chose Luke over the Emperor from the beginning. Between the events of The New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, Vader learns the truth about Luke. He knows that the boy survived and therefore realizes that the Emperor has been lying to him about that fact for 20 years. I don't even think the Emperor knew. Now, the Emperor told him that that Padme died while the baby, so he didn't know that Luke was his son. And when he found out that Luke was called Luke Skywalker, he was like, oh crap, I have a son. He didn't know Leia was his daughter, even though he tortured the hell out of her, okay, in episode 4. But he figured that out, and he was like, wait a minute, my son lives. Which is why he pleased to the Emperor. We'll get back to that in a minute. It says, and when he is ordered to destroy Luke, he suggests they might be able to use the boy. As soon as he comes face to face with Luke, he offers a chance to double-cross the Emperor so that the two of them can rule the galaxy as father and son. These moments make Vader's eventual turn easy to swallow, as it's clear that even when he was fully on the dark side, he wanted to side with his son. No, he wanted his son to side with him. He actually says that in Empire Strikes Back. He actually says, "Join me, and we can rule the galaxy as father and son," which is the same plea he gives to Padme in this movie. He says, "I'm becoming more powerful than the Emperor. I can overthrow him. We can make things the way we want them to be." It's always been about power, man. And it wasn't until, because he's always been on the dark side of that. It's not until he sees his son being electrocuted and his son's going, "Father, please," that he finally realizes this lying SOB to my right or my left needs to die. And so he picks him up and throws him down the reactor shaft. Again, watch the films, man. Seriously. The Emperor blamed him for the destruction of the Death Star. One of the things that gets explored more deeply in the Marvel Star Wars comics, particularly the Darth Vader series, which is actually under the Dark Horse printing, not the Marvel printing, is the fact that tensions were pretty high between Vader and the Emperor between the events of A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. The Emperor blamed Vader for the loss of the Death Star, partially because it was a project Vader had been hoping to oversee. It was also something the Empire had invested all its time and resources in. However, the Emperor mostly blamed Vader. There were no other survivors of the Death Star for the Emperor to place his blame on. Okay, I don't know if he's talking. I don't know if there's like a new Vader series, because I know that when Lucasfilm was bought out by Disney, because Disney owned Marvel Studios. The rights went from Dark Horse back to Marvel Cinemas, or Marvel Comics and Marvel Studios, for the comics portion of it. I think it went back to Marvel Comics at that point. So I don't know if that's what he's referring to. I don't know if there's a new Darth Vader arc where Palpatine's like, "Hey, you let them kill the Death Star." But there was, in the extended universe, there was a Darth Vader series that Dark Horse did under the Legends EU. And one of the things that Palpatine did is he used cloning technology to basically clone the original creator of the Death Star, the original architect, and basically killed him in very painful ways, like multiple times. So again, I don't know what this guy's ignoring. Yeah, Vader would be the only guy to blame, but Vader's probably going to be like, "I didn't know that was in there, because I didn't see the plans for the Death Star. I didn't know Galen Erso did that, if we're going by the new timeline of Rogue One. I didn't know that Galen Erso had put a weakness in the Death Star, my master. I'll be more vigilant on that next time." So, and again, I don't know what he's talking about. So, that's, yeah. Most of the Empire view him as outdated. This is number 2. Most of the people within the Empire, those who haven't had the chance to witness his power firsthand, Darth Vader is simply a relic of days gone by. He hails from a more mystical time, in an era without Jedi. There's really no place for a Sith either. Not so true, because there are still Jedi that survived the Order 66. We'll get back to that in a second. Many officers aboard the Death Star comment on this in A New Hope. This is a structured empire. Every building is designed almost exactly the same way, and everyone wears the same matching uniform. Vader definitely stands out when he walks into a room, and his devotion to the Force causes skepticism among the more practical-minded, high-ranking officers of the Empire. Again, we've touched on this, but there were Jedi out there, okay? And that's made clear throughout a lot of the novels, a lot of the comics, a lot of, even the movies kind of mention it, that there are other Jedi out there. Yoda was still out there. Obi-Wan was still out there. I mean, this guy even mentioned Obi-Wan. It was like, "Oh, why didn't he go seek out Obi-Wan?" He probably didn't think to look on Tatooine. The guy just answered his own question in the previous one. He was like, "We didn't think to look on Tatooine for his dead son, or for his son, because he thought he was dead." Well, duh. If he had no purpose to go back to Tatooine, why would he think that Obi-Wan was hiding on Tatooine? You just answered your own question, you dumbass. Seriously. Did you even watch these films? Honestly, man. And it's like, this is something that I also don't like about Screen Rant, is that they continually use the same point over and over and over and over and over again. I've already talked to death about this point of most of the Empire view him as outdated. No, they don't. He has an aura of malevolence. When he walks, like, did you see that opening scene in episode 4? When he first walks into the cruiser, the Tantive 4? Man, those guys are like... You can almost see their bug eyes under their helmet, you dummy. Like, they're scared of him. They're like, back out of the way of this guy. Do not get in his way. He will kill you. Mostly because if you've seen in Rogue One, which I doubt you've even seen a Star Wars film in your life. If you've seen Rogue One, you saw what he did to the friggin' Rebel troopers, man. The stormtroopers were behind him, watching him tear them apart. He's not outdated. The hell you talking? No. No. They saw him take him apart. Like I said, Monty viewed him, okay, as a cog in a wheel, you know, as a barrier for him to get to being the emperor of, you know, of this galactic empire, okay? That's what he viewed him as. That's why he's challenging him. Duh. Alright. His armor is just a life support system. Again, this guy's... If there's one thing that people love to overlook about Darth Vader, is that his armor is not just meant to be cool or even meant to look that intimidating. It is not something he would be wearing, even if he didn't have to be. And inside is just a small, shriveled old man who is barely alive. Vader is a tragic character, and because of this, which makes him a somewhat pathetic character, as powerful as he is, he's holding by a thread at every moment. One thing people immediately recognize about this character is his incredibly labored breathing. What does that have to do? What? Who is this guy catering to? Seriously, this guy does not know what he's talking about. I mean, it's like, when I first saw this article, I started reading through some of these, and I'm going, has this guy even seen a Star Wars film at all, ever? Because, I mean, honestly, if you've seen this movie, you'll know that it's a life support system. If you've seen episode 5, you'll know it's a life support system. He's in a freaking hyperbaric chamber. Okay? And when the chamber opens up, okay, it was open and you know, Piet is standing there. Or is it Veers? I can't remember. I think it was Veers. General Veers is standing there. And the helmet comes down and goes on his head. Okay? And we hear that distinctive... We know it's a life support system! This guy's overlooking that fact because he's an idiot and he's never seen them films. Okay? Or he gave them a cursory glance while they were on television one time and was watching them while he was typing out an article for Screen Rant. And he'd missed a lot of these scenes or something, because anyone who's seen a Star Wars film knows Vader's suit is a life support system. That's all it's ever been. Alright, I've gone on enough about this, so I'm going to go ahead and call it here, okay? So... let me know what you think in the comments. Give this video a like. Hit the subscribe button. Just mash that button down, and you know, I'll try to keep some new content in the future. I will be doing some DVD reviews. I'm kind of going through my movies right now, trying to think of what I want to review first. Just kind of going through and just kind of picking out some movies that I might want to cover. In fact, as I'm standing here saying this, I'm kind of looking at my movie wall thinking if there's something that I just want to do. So keep it locked into Russ's Movie Corner. And again, if this video came off as condescending, it's because Screen Rant is stupid. Okay? So I'm sorry if you think I'm rude, but I mean, as long as Screen Rant's going to write drivel like this, it's just not... I'm sorry. I'm going to have to come out and say, no, you're done. Because as a fan of Star Wars, I can't let stuff like that go by. I do the same thing because I'm a Christian. I love to debate on religion, and I'm into apologetics, which is defense. So this is apologetics. Okay, I'm defending Star Wars because it's one of my favorite things of all time. Okay, just like I said in my rant about Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy, and I love it. And the fact that they made such a dumb movie was kind of unforgivable in my eyes. But when it comes to Star Wars, it's Star Wars. I will love it no matter what, and you can't change my mind. Okay. So keep it locked into Russ's Movie Corner, and like I said, I will have some new DVD reviews up within the next few days. I just need to kind of figure out what movies I want to talk about and how I want to go about doing that. I will eventually want to talk about this movie series right here, James Bond. But that is going to take a long time. Because there's 24 movies, and yeah, it's going to take me a while to get through all of them. I will probably do them in blocks, so like I'll probably talk about the Connery series with the Lazenby movie kind of thrown in because that's a trilogy, and then I will probably talk about the Moore films, and then I will probably do Dalton and Brosnan kind of all in one, and then I'll do Daniel Craig. So eventually I will do that. I know that they're filming Bond 25 here pretty soon. Woohoo! Yes! Daniel Craig is coming back for one more time. Yes. So hopefully they'll bring back Leia Seydow from Spectre, and hopefully they'll bring back Christoph Waltz. Please. So keep it locked here to Russ's Movie Corner, and the next time I see you, I will have a new DVD review for you. So have a wonderful day, and I will see you when I see you.